Welcome to episode 3 of the Effective Faith podcast. It's a podcast answering questions on productivity, tools, gear to help us get things done, as well as theology, Christian living, and how to approach getting things done in a way that supports our well-being and helps us to honour Jesus better. Before we dive in today, a little bit of housekeeping here. There's a small group of people that are tuning in each week and listening to this podcast. This is really encouraging to me. So to you, my fledgling little group of loyal listeners, I want to say thank you, and I have 2 favours to ask. First, I want to help you. So if you have any questions, issues, difficulties, challenges that relate to work, to productivity, effectiveness, and how all of this relates to Christian living, then please do let me know. You can drop them in the comments below, or you can email me. That's effectivefaith15.58@gmail.com. I've had one question come in so far that I'm already addressing in some planned future content. Second, please do pass this on to anyone who you think might benefit from it, the podcast or this episode, and share it on your social media circles. I'd love to reach more people, and I'd love to learn what challenges people face in their daily grinds so I can tailor content to be more helpful. Now, it's a well-known fact that a bad workman always blames his tools. This is true. But to this, I often reply, a good workman makes sure he has the right tools before he starts. And then I'll jokingly add that the right tool is always the biggest and the most powerful. But that's a joke. You see, today on the Effective Faith podcast, we turn our attention to the various apps and tools that we use every single day to get our work done. Our question: what is the most effective tool stack for managing our lives and our work with all of the complexities we need to navigate day to day? It's a growing issue for many, as more and more people are now being allowed much greater freedom in how they actually organise their work and their lives. There's more money in this market than ever before, and that means there's more and more tools and apps on offer, all doing different things, but all of them promising that they will make you more effective, more productive, and give you the life you've always dreamed of. But that is an empty promise. Yes, apps, tools, they can help us get stuff done, and they can help us be more organised. But no app can be all things to all people, giving you the life of your dreams. You see, every app is designed to solve certain problems to meet certain needs. Often I find those are problems that are a big deal for the app developers, but they might not be a big deal for you, for your work, for your life. So every single app is going to have a whole host of features that you don't actually need in order for you to be effective. It's worth remembering that. So as we start, we need to ask a basic, fundamental question. Not what's out there, not what can these apps do. Far more basic than that. What do you actually need? What do you actually need? What are the basic tools that we need to manage our lives in this increasingly digital world? So to answer that, I'm going to share a hopefully unidentifiable example of possibly the most effective person I've ever known. She manages everything in an analog format as far as possible. She uses pen and paper. She has a simple diary sort of calendar notebook, a simple to-do list, and then a notebook. Now obviously, for some stuff, she might need to use something like Microsoft Word, and they've yet to invent an analog means of managing email. But there you have it. You don't actually need any apps at all in order to be effective. You see, more basic than that, more fundamental, what we need is a means to manage our time, to manage our tasks, some way of taking notes to manage our projects, our more complex work, our planning, a means to communicate, and a means to produce and store our documents. That's it. That's the heart. That's the essence. And that is actually very simple. So my friend, she has a diary to manage her time, a to-do list to manage her tasks, a notebook for planning, managing projects, making notes, an email app, and Microsoft Office. So, what do we actually need? A calendar, a task manager, notes manager, communication tool, and an office suite. Just those 5. That is all we need to be effective in actually getting stuff done. And it is entirely possible for pretty much all of that to be done with pen and paper. However, as life is becoming increasingly digital, and more of the inputs that we get are digital, my preference is to recommend digital tools for most of this stuff. Digital tools come with some built-in advantages. They are accessible everywhere. That's the first one, especially as our smartphones likely have apps to cover everything we need, and they fit in our pocket or our bag. We carry them with us. Digital tools, they make it so much easier to access, to change things whenever you need to on the fly. You see, any analog system makes it a lot harder to make changes. Digital tools, they can also be set up to give you helpful reminders, to show you what you need to see, where you need to see it. You can write reminder notes in a notebook, but you actually have to remember to open the notebook to be reminded. So I would recommend that everyone adopt a basic set of digital tools. But I would recommend we don't fully abandon pen and paper just yet, but I'll elaborate on that in future content. Now, everyone's work is different, and so everyone will likely have something on top of that they need that's specific to their work, their life. Maybe it's a coding tool, maybe it's some kind of drawing tool, or a writing tool, for example. But at the very core, the basic needs for managing our stuff, the tool stack is actually quite small. So the next question, which is better, simplicity or complexity? Honestly, simplicity is better as far as you can manage it. You see, the purpose of your apps is to serve and to help you manage your stuff and then get out of the way so you can actually get stuff done. The purpose of the app developer is often to get you to spend as much time as they possibly can inside their app, so you consider them to be so valuable that you can't live without them. And thus, we're seeing the rise in the all-in-one application. And even older apps, like the great granddaddy of them all, Evernote, branching away from their original purpose and going down that all-in-one route more and more with calendars, with tasks. There is a tension between the purpose of the developer and the purpose of the user. That's you. An unnecessary complexity is the killer of productivity. That's true both in terms of the complexity within the individual apps themselves, but also with the complexity of your tool stack and how the different apps you have relate to one another. All those different links and backlinks and graph views and everything. You see, apps like Notion, like ClickUp, like Obsidian, they're great. Please don't get me wrong, I like these apps. And for certain roles and work teams where there's a need to manage a lot of complexity, collaboration and the like, these apps can be really, really helpful. The trouble is, whenever I've tried to use the apps in the ways that so many people I see online do, I end up getting sucked into the complexity of it in a way that just eats my time. Time that would be better spent doing my work, living my life. Just today, my task was to plan the quarter ahead, October, November, December. I realised that the template I use in Notion for my projects wasn't that great, and I almost spent my whole planning session redesigning the template, which is not what I'd wanted to do. I almost got sucked in. See, the more complex an application is, the more features and functions there will be that you don't actually need, but you might end up using them because they're there. The more complex an application is, the longer it takes to learn how to use it. The more complex an application is, the more complicated it becomes to actually manage and organise everything inside of it. The classic example is Notion. When you start, you've got nothing. You have to build it yourself. Some years ago, Carl Pauline, he launched something he called Project One. The idea was to have only one of each type of application. This is a really helpful approach. One task manager that contains all of your life and all of your work tasks, one calendar, one notes application, etc., etc. Now for me, this was quite controversial, to mix work and life stuff all into one place. However, I did find the wisdom of this out the hard way, in that I would often forget to do those important personal tasks that needed doing during my working day, because they're not on the to-do list that I had with me at work. And I once double booked myself at great personal cost, had to drastically amend plans because they weren't on my work calendar. So there you have it. Pick a time management tool, pick a task management tool, pick a notes application, an office suite, storage and a communication tool. Just use one of each. Though with communication tools you'll probably need an email and a messaging app. But I would recommend minimising the number of different messaging apps that you have and use. There's so many out there now, you can be overloaded with different means of contacting people. Minimise it. Set these apps up in a way that works for you, and then learn the apps inside out until they truly serve you and get out of your way, so they truly help you get stuff done. Then avoid the temptation to switch apps, the temptation to add apps to this simple setup that you built. And it's fine if you want to do all of this with pen and paper. The only downside is it's a bit less portable, and it's harder to share stuff with people if you need to. So what is my approach personally to all of this? I wanted to briefly sketch this in as we close. I use Google Calendar. It's my calendar for managing my events, my tasks, my time. It's free. It's available everywhere. However, on my old MacBook, I tended to use Apple Calendar as the interface, but bringing in my calendars from Google. At the moment, on Windows, I use Notion Calendar as the interface, but the calendars are all in Google. I'm using Notion at the moment itself as a planner for managing projects, managing the content that I produce. But I use UpNote as my notes application. I have been working on a way to do everything that I do in Notion across UpNote and Todoist, so I can reduce the number of apps I have, but I haven't managed to see a way of doing that quite yet. UpNote is also the app that I do all of my writing of content in as well. For documents, I use Google's Office Suite, and I use Google Drive for storage. Google stuff is all free. They offer the best amount of free storage. That's why I picked them. And then lastly, all of my tasks are in Todoist. The speed, the simplicity, the power of this application cannot be beaten in my book. I have once in the past tried to put everything in Notion, notes, tasks, everything, but it just got too complicated. And I've used ClickUp quite a lot in the past on many an occasion for tasks, for projects, for planning, for content. And I love ClickUp. It's a fantastic application, but it is just overpowered for what I need. And they've jacked up the price because of it. It's just, in my view, out of my budget. So I don't use ClickUp anymore. It just felt off to me to do that. So that's my tool stack. Now, as I'm finishing recording this, I realised that I forgot to mention tea and coffee. You see, either of those, or both of them, are also to be included on this list of essential tools for getting your work done. Now, this week, I'm going to leave you with the words of the writer Natalie Goldberg for my out of context quote. "Choose your tools carefully," she says, "but not so carefully that you get uptight or spend more time at the stationery store than at your writing table." And I think the same rule applies for the App Store. Thank you very much for listening. Hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube. And please do send me questions in the comments using the email address I mentioned earlier. Check out these other videos on YouTube as well. And we'll see you next time for the next episode of the podcast. Thank you very much.